All right, for our next segment from ATS&J 2023, I'm really pleased to bring Dan Evans into the show. He was giving a really fantastic, powerful presentation, and something that many of us probably haven't thought of, or we've thought of, but we really haven't prepared properly for how to be ready for it. Mass casualty planning when it comes to the athletic trainer's role, whether you're in a school district or an organization. There was a lot of really great key takeaways. So Dan, thank you for bringing that to ATS&J 2023. Dan Evans is the athletic trainer and district safety specialist at Woodstown High School here in New Jersey. He's also the emergency management coordinator for the Borough of Woodstown. And Dan, if we can get right into some of those key takeaways, can you first kind of define what is mass casualty and why is it necessary for athletic trainers to be thinking about planning for this?
So, mass casualty incidents are defined as any incident that involves more than five patients and an incident that overwhelms the normal responding resources. So, watching the news, you'll see things like train accidents, bus accidents, active shooter situations, things like that. And having worked a lot of sidelines over 31 years now as an athletic trainer, I tend to focus on one to two patients possible.
Mhm.
So we've got what's going on inside the lines of the court, the field, the whatever the venue is we're working. And occasionally we can run into a situation where we have a spectator medical emergency, but again, limited number of patients. So I started asking questions after reading an article, and I'll get to that in a later question, um, about how do you plan for these things? And then some different events have occurred in high school athletics recently that got me even thinking a little more of what would happen in my setting if a situation like this occurred. How would we respond? So
Yeah, and how do we go about planning for this? I mean, you kind of painted a picture of what that drill looked like in your presentation. How would an athletic trainer, where would they start? Who all needs to be involved in that plan to really organize that kind of drill?
yeah, so we let me kind of I'll give you the background of where this idea came from. In October 2018, there was an article published in the NATA News, and the authors of the article were Dr. Tina Claiborne from
Mhm.
Adrian College out in Michigan and Mr. Darrell Conway from the University of Michigan, and they did just this. They planned a mass casualty exercise. And they created a recipe or a format of how to put this together. So that article got me thinking of how could we do this? And then the next part of it was how do we get the players? How do we get, the
Mhm.
actors to be involved and in different organizations? So I got my local county emergency services involved, and I got my municipal emergency fire, EMS, and then we reached out to our advanced life support providers in the area, and it just grew legs. Everybody wanted to be involved, and everybody came to the planning meetings and said, okay, this is what we'd like to test. So when you're planning any type of exercise, you start off with what do we need to test from our response? And in this situation, we're looking at access to the facilities. Let me back up really. So, right from the start of it, you're looking at your medical response. You've got athletic trainers at a high school football game, maybe a sideline physician, maybe some student athletic trainers, and EMTs. And then we grow from there, and it's how do other responders get into the facility while spectators are probably trying to get out of the facility? What resources do we need to provide rescue slash triage slash medical treatment? How are we transporting people away from here? What's the police department need to do? Create a perimeter. What is our school security doing for crowd control? How are we handling the responsibilities of who we're responsible for from the school district, the athletes, the visiting team, the cheerleaders, the band, the game workers, the referees? So a lot of that's beyond the athletic trainers exact specific role, but that's what all came together to work through the simulation.
Yeah, and when you're talking about making this a team effort, there's also probably a lot of those community groups to engage with at a higher level, not just for this mass casualty planning, but also just for in general going over your emergency response at your school or your organization. Who are some other organizations locally that you reached out to that you brought in to be involved with this? I think you mentioned like Rowan University as well had students coming
Yes.
in.
Yep.
How did you bring those other people in?
So we started with the idea of running a mass casualty exercise. We started with different ways. What would cause a mass casualty incident at an athletic
Mhm.
setting? severe weather event. Bleacher collapse was what we focused in on. Could be an active shooter type situation. So then, all right, we want to do this. Who could this benefit besides the school personnel? So I'm an adjunct instructor with Rowan University. Reached out to their athletic training program, and they brought down over 50 athletic training students. And they participated. They were the medical providers. So we had 2 Rowan students fill the role of certified athletic trainer. That was their simulated role. And then we had another 4 fill the role as student athletic trainers, like those students were in their clinical setting. We had one of our sideline physicians come down, so he was able to volunteer with us also. Cooper Air Medical Services came. They actually brought a helicopter. So the event concluded with a medevac helicopter landing at the site and providing us an educational opportunity with that. And then besides local EMS, local fire, county resources, Inspira health system is our advanced life support. So they came down with a whole crew of people. Woodstown PD, Woodstown Emergency Management. There were 12 different organizations involved when we got done.
That's amazing. And as you go through this too, you talked about the importance of when you go through this process, it's not just about going through it, it's about what you call the hot wash after and about what you learn from it. You know, what are some key takeaways that you learned after going through this event that if you were to do it again or as you're updating your plans that you would act on?
If I can speak to any group about this, I start off with, I need you to walk away with 2 topics, 2 ideas. One is triage training. I have never in all my years had any formal triage training. And you get in a situation like this, you need to rely on that. And one of the topics that came up or ideas that came up in the hot wash was athletic trainers are very proficient in certain skills, but triage is not necessarily one of our skill sets. And then the second part away from the triage training is incident command system. So if you Google FEMA, they have an incident command system training program. There's an online course, ICS 100. It's a 2-hour free online course. This is the vocabulary and the process that all these other first responders are going to employ when they show up at your scene. PD, fire, EMS. They're going to start talking a language that we don't, as athletic trainers, necessarily know. And we're going to need to be able to communicate with them and understand what they're talking about. So I think it's a really valuable, just 2-hour course, online, free, that you can take at your leisure and gain that skill set also.
And I think that's so crucial that you mentioned that because common errors occur when there's not common language and when there's disconnects in understanding. So having that course, and I've taken that before, it was very helpful as well from a planning perspective. Very much recommended for an athletic trainers to take that course. It's free, it's online, and it just really gives you a perspective of what all the other first responders and emergency personnel are saying, how they're planning, how they're doing that, in addition to what you're doing at your own site. So good stuff. Dan, thank you so much for doing the recap. Your contact information is in the show notes. So if anybody has any follow-up questions or wants to pick your brain, they can reach out to you that way. But thank you for bringing this presentation to ATS&J 2023. And hopefully the athletic trainers listening will get them thinking about ways that they could do a little practice with this and do a drill in their own location to be prepared in the event that something does happen. We hope it never does, but if we're prepared, we're likely to have a better outcome. So thank you very much, Dan. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great day.
You too.